The Great Smoky Mountains National Park, America's first national park and America's most visited national park. This park, along with the city of Gatlinburg, Tennessee, experienced a devastating wildfire in 2016. Come along with me on my visit 9 months after that fire, see some of the beauty of this park, and let me tell you the story of that devastating wildfire. The park is located along the state lines of Tennessee and North Carolina, and it covers 522,419 acres, 816 square miles. U.S. Highway 441 runs through the park, and it has two main entrances, the first being in Cherokee, North Carolina, and the second, Gatlinburg, Tennessee. It was in the late 1800s that logging companies were moving into the area and clear-cutting what was a virgin forest. Their campfires also contributed to wildfires. It was the efforts of local residents who gathered together and gained the support of government that led to this park being established in 1926. The park was chartered by the U.S. Congress in 1934 and later dedicated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1940. The park has more visitors per year than the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone combined. In 2020, over 14 million people visited the Great Smoky Mountain National Park. Some of the highest mountains in eastern North America are located here. 70 miles of the Appalachian Trail that runs from Georgia to Maine passes through the park. There are around 850 miles of trails and unpaved roads. There are 80 historical buildings throughout the park. The park was dedicated as a World Heritage Site in 1983. The name Smoky Mountains comes from its ever-present morning fog. For me, it's pretty easy to understand why this place is visited so often, why it's so popular with tourists. You have these breathtaking views of the mountains. There are plenty of opportunities to see wildlife. If you love the outdoors, there are miles and miles of hiking trails, but be prepared because this isn't walking on level ground. It's very rugged terrain. Make sure you're prepared. Take some water with you. And as I promised, I am going to move into talking about the wildfires that happened here. They were in 2016 in November and December, and I visited the park in September of 2017. I knew about the fires through the news media, but I did not understand how much destruction actually happened here. So we came into the area through Pigeon Forge and into Gatlinburg, and at first glance coming through Gatlinburg, you really could not grasp how bad it was. The main parkway kind of looked like it was untouched at first glance. All the buildings, the Ripley building, the aquarium, all the restaurants and stuff down the parkway looked normal, looked like they did not have any damage. And it was later, once we had checked into where we were staying in Gatlinburg and started talking to some of the locals, that we started to get that deeper look, to look up in behind the aquarium, to look at the building next to us, and to drive around the outskirts of town and see the foundations of the buildings that had been burnt completely to the ground, and that 9 months later they were still cleaning up. In the park itself, the areas that we visited where the fires were, mostly the greenery was coming back. There was some scarring on some of the trees. The Chimney Tops 2 trail was still closed at that time, and I believe I looked online and read a little bit. It sounds like it may still be closed now, six years later. I'm not sure when that article was written, but I'm going to get into some of the stats of what actually happened during this fire. The wildfires began on November 23rd and were finally contained December 22nd of 2016. There were 17,900 acres that were burned. There were 2,460 buildings destroyed. The cause was listed as arson. There were 190 injuries and 14 people lost their lives. So on November 23rd, the Chimney Top 2 fire was reported to park officials. There was no immediate response to try to extinguish the fire, but the second day, the 24th, they had decided to try to keep it contained in an area with natural features. They brought out 3 Chinook helicopters to dump water on the fire and to try to keep it from spreading. Keep in mind that this part of Tennessee had been experiencing a pretty severe drought, and there now were high winds in the forecast. It was November 28th that a park official observed that the fire had spread outside of the containment boundary to a picnic area in the Chimney Top 2 area. Shortly after that, the fire was reported farther north in the park behind a residential area known as Manat Park. On the afternoon and evening of November 28th, wind gusts of over 80 miles an hour blew sparks and down trees that hit power lines that would set additional fires in the city of Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. Because of power outages and pumping houses that had burned up, fire hydrants in Gatlinburg quickly ran dry. Gatlinburg's fire chief turned to Sevier County for help and later would turn to the state. Fire damage to cell phone systems and overloaded radio traffic made communication between the departments a problem. When it was over, almost 18,000 acres had burned. 14 people lost their lives. 190 people were injured. 2,460 buildings were destroyed. It was over $2 billion in damages. Who will take the blame? 2 unnamed juveniles were initially charged with aggravated arson in connection to the fires. However, charges were later dropped due to the lack of evidence, as well as language in an agreement between the state of Tennessee and the Department of the Interior, which excludes state jurisdiction from prosecuting criminal activities that occur entirely within the park. On May 24th, 2018, a federal lawsuit was filed against the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on behalf of the victims seeking damages for the failure to stop the Chimney Top 2 fire before it left the park. District Judge Ronnie Greer ruled September 8th of 2020 that the lawsuit against the United States could go forward on a claim of failure to warn under the Federal Tort Claims Act before a judge. From my research, it looks like that case has been thrown out also around October 2022. It looks like also in 21 that 14 insurance agencies went after the same group on the same charges. We'll see what happens. Regardless, this is a beautiful place to visit. Pigeon Forge and Gatlinburg both have a lot to offer as far as tourism, wax museums, Ripley's, the aquarium, dinner theaters. There's just a lot of stuff to do there. Thank you for stopping by the channel. I hope you take time to check out some of my other videos. If you have come this far, if you like what you see, please subscribe. Until next time, my friends, it's good to be alive.